All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction. If you're new here, this is a space where we unpack the truths, traumas, and transformations that come with life after incarceration. Today's episode is about the emotional weight of rebuilding a life after prison when the people around you don't see or don't want to see your growth. It's about the tension that can arise with family and friends, the struggle to be understood, and the courage it takes to keep pushing forward. I think we're all going to need that. Today, we're going to dig deep into what happens when your apology, your transformation, your effort still isn't enough. This is the Conviction Fiction. All right, welcome back, guys. In many of our past episodes, we've explored how people returning from incarceration often carry a strong desire to reconnect with family and prove their worth, which is all good. I mean, we all love that love story. When you go home and everything's all lovely and you're making changes and the community accepts you, people have forgiven you, and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's a very motivating factor, a fantasy sometimes, even when that coming home means being embraced, trusted, and appreciated. That's what we all want. Now, we talked about this in our episodes with Eric, one of our frequent guests on the podcast, when we were talking about PTSD after prison, because there are some expectations on both sides and they can clash hard. You hope they'll be proud. You hope your family is proud of you. You hope that the friends and the community that you pretty much turned your back on, now that you're back and you got this whole new mindset, that they are proud of you, that they believe in you. They might expect you to stay the same person. And then there's that thing when those expectations meet reality. Things can fall apart pretty fast, guys. And people often assume that family support is automatic. You know, they're your blood relatives, they're your family, or distant relatives, but they're your family, no matter what, cousins, brothers, uncles. But real support has to evolve as we do. It's very painful to learn that some family members may resist your growth, whether out of fear, I don't know, jealousy, or discomfort with change. Maybe your evolution reminds them of their stagnation. Maybe they built a narrative around your absence and can't update the story now that you're back. Now, this whole idea of family support becomes a fantasy when it's not rooted in mutual growth and understanding. And that's what this show is about. We're going to dispel that fantasy because those fantasies can be devastating when it crashes into reality. First of all, there's that welcome home fantasy, right? We all know this one where just imagine you're walking into a family reunion or a family get together and arms are wide open. There's food on the table, especially since you just got home. I mean, food is food, right? Laughter's in the air, but instead you come home to cold shoulders and there's a little bit of tension and unspoken resentment. You know, that people looking over their shoulders and all the little side eyes. You expect a celebration, but you got suspicion. Then there's that second chance fantasy. Now, you believe that showing change, like getting a job, staying out of trouble, being present, that all of this would be enough for those loved ones to embrace the new you. But instead, they treat your efforts with doubt, like he only doing this for that, or they start questioning your motives, or even bring up your past like it just happened yesterday. Then there's that third fantasy, the unbreakable bond fantasy. Now, you thought the bond with your siblings or your parents was unshakable, that love would override that time or distance that you guys were apart, but you quickly discovered that the bond weakened, or it was very conditional on what you could provide. And now, despite all of your growth, you're met with hostility, or worse than that, indifference. So those are some of the fantasies that we are going to tackle today, because all of those things are some of the things that you're going to face. I mean, I faced a lot of them. I'm not going to sit here and say that I faced all of the fantasies, but I have been a part of it. And that's why this episode is more important, is very important, because it will allow you to have a heads up or know what to expect when making your reentry. Now, there's another fantasy. It's the redemption fantasy, where you picture yourself. This is you. You create a fantasy where you picture yourself helping others, like a younger cousin or I don't know, a friend in need. But if being instead of being seen as a mentor or a protector, your family sees it as reckless, irresponsible, or selfish. And then you get into that whole the proving them wrong fantasy, where you think that the success that you have will just shut them up. That your wins, whether you got a business, whether you got uh, a company or you're working for a company, that you're being a great father, that all of this will speak for itself. But then you find out that no matter how far you come, some folks are committed to remembering you at your lowest point. Now, we've highlighted several guests who've made major strides after release, starting businesses, going back to school, helping the community, mentoring others. And still, many of them report pushback from people closest to them. Now, I'm not here to report pushback from mine, but that's what this episode is about. Because if you can go back, the episode with Jessica Jones from Beyond the Chains, want to give a special shout out to Jessica Jones. She's still in upstate New York. Yeah, she's still up there. Shout out to Jessica Jones. We discuss how success post incarceration often makes others feel uncomfortable. You're doing what they thought you couldn't or you shouldn't be doing, and that can trigger resentment. Now, this segment or this episode is about the emotional labor of proving yourself over and over again. You're whether, like I said, you're building a career, caring for your kids, running a business, creating content that helps others, but some still question your motives or assume that you're making poor choices. And what I'm going to give you today are the tools in order to get past that, because that could be an emotional toll on you, where it can knock you off your square and you can stop doing what you're supposed to be doing, living in your purpose. So, all of that begs the question, what does success look like to them? Is it, just a job and a quiet life? Is it, I don't know, silence about your journey? You just don't talk about where you've been, you just kind of hide it. Is it being who they remember you were, not who you've become? Let's think about that. What is success for them? Because sometimes success isn't celebrated because it doesn't align with their expectations. We need to know how they define success. And this is where the disconnect comes. And you can start to feel like it's a betrayal on both sides, because for you, the one returning and rebuilding, it feels like a betrayal because you expected support from the people who claim to love you the most. Yeah, you were locked up, you were around murderers, killers, or worse. And you lived through that. And you thought that your progress would be met with encouragement. Instead, it can be met with criticism, suspicion, or silence. Now, after doing the inner work, making sacrifices, and walking the path most would never survive, they would not survive that. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Like a lot of the things that we've been through, I'm talking to my community right now. I'm not saying like people aren't strong, because people have to be strong in different areas, but most of them wouldn't survive some of the things that you've been through. And being doubted by your own family cuts deeper than any outside judgment ever could. And that's just the reality of it, right? That's from your side. But on their side, that disconnect can feel like betrayal too. Though it's not always fair or rational, it doesn't make any sense, but they may. And that's where we try to be empathetic on our show. We want to see both sides of everything, right? They may feel abandoned emotionally or left behind by your growth. They may not understand who you are now. And rather than meet the new version of you, they hold on to the old version of you. Your evolution can challenge their comfort zone or even their own lack of change. So they lash out. They project or they rewrite the story in a way that makes them feel safe, even if it distorts the truth. And that's why we have this show, which is, of course, the Conviction Fiction, where we are changing the narrative. We're having those tough discussions. If you want to chime in, please drop a line in the comment section. You can always follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or wherever you follow your favorite podcast. Go there, leave a comment. Let's continue the discussion, because in reality, both sides are always going to feel hurt. Whenever you're dealing with justice impacted individuals, whether you're behind the bars, on the outside of the bars, or you're a victim or you're a perpetrator, both sides will feel hurt. But healing can't happen until both sides are willing to update the story. We've had other powerful conversations with guests like Ebony Ross Stover from Dream Builders. Up in Philly, want to give a shout out to Ebony up in Philly. Catch up with you, Ebony, soon. She always emphasized how judgment from loved ones can be more painful than judgment from the system. Now, like I said, this episode is how even well-meaning family can cast doubt on your intentions. That's why your intentions need to be pure. Your intentions and your purpose must remain true to all that stuff you've been talking about, right? It doesn't even make any sense because they may be completely right about you. If you are having some self-doubt or you've been thrown off of your purpose, then maybe it's that chance for you to get back to your purpose. You may be doing everything right, being honest, transparent, mindful, and yet you still can be accused of being fake, manipulative, or unchanged. So owning your past is very important, guys. And being accountable doesn't mean others will accept your present. Sometimes their refusal to see your growth says more about their wounds than your actions. I don't want you to get down on yourself. I don't want you to get down on others. I want you to keep moving forward into your purpose. Let's just be honest, man. Sometimes people haven't forgiven themselves for something. All right. It might be even you. Have you forgiven yourself for something that happened in the past? Maybe your change makes them question why they haven't changed. You never know. The reaction could be about unhealed trauma, unresolved pain, or just plain old fear. So you got to remember, because I took this personally. I'm going to get a little sidetracked a little bit, because as I was preparing for this episode, I had to realize that I'm not always the villain in a story, right? But I may be the trigger in a story. Okay. I wanted you the guys to think about that, wherein you may believe that you are the villain in a story, but it may not be that you're the villain. You're actually just a trigger for something else. And that's something that we don't talk about enough. What if you're just a trigger? Okay. What if your growth, your success, or even just your presence reminds whoever it is of something that they haven't healed from? Maybe this transformation that you've been through only highlights the areas in their life where they actually feel stuck. Maybe, I don't know, it could be a grasp at straws right here, but maybe that second chance you earn shines a light on the opportunities that they think they missed. Okay, maybe your peace is a threat to their need for control. Whatever it is, it doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't mean you need to shrink. It doesn't mean that you should stray away from your purpose or what you're trying to do or what you're working in order to change the narrative. That should not change any of that, right? But it does mean we need to practice self-awareness and compassion without self-blame. Being the trigger doesn't mean you're the villain. It means you're touching a nerve that existed before you even walked in the room. It was always there. So if someone lashes out at you, cuts you off, or tries to twist your words, it may have nothing to do with your character and everything to do with their wounds. And I'm not just talking to the audience or the Conviction Fiction followers. I'm talking to myself. I have to remind myself that it may not have anything to do with me or my character when it comes to the emotional baggage that other people have. The best you can do is stay grounded in who you are, stay accountable where it's necessary, but don't carry shame for just simply evolving. Sometimes your light just exposes shadows others haven't even faced. I can remember back to our episode with April Park. Shout out to AP Rose Entertainment. I'm giving all kinds of shout outs on this episode because these people had given me um, a lot of help along the way. They definitely shared some positive messages or shared positive messages on this podcast. But April from AP Rose Entertainment, we talked about how healthy boundaries are critical, extremely critical, not just for women navigating reentry, but just for anyone. Now, this episode again is a reminder that choosing peace is not the same as giving up. Refusing to argue or explain yourself endlessly is not avoidance, it's self respect because you are choosing a higher road instead of making wounds deeper. Sometimes you just reach a point where you realize the version of you they keep trying to debate no longer exists. They can call you a piece of shit, they can call you trash, they can call you all these things, but you cannot debate somebody if they think they are talking to a version of you that no longer exists. And that's why it's important to set up boundaries. Boundaries help protect your progress, but boundaries are just one part of a bigger toolbox. Here are some additional tools to keep you moving forward, guys. Journaling. Always journal, write down your experiences and emotions. Not only helps with your reflection, but it gives you a sense of clarity when things feel confusing or heavy. I still write. I know that was one of my go-to things when I was incarcerated. I used to write a lot, right? I even tried to write a couple of days ago, just on a whim because it was something heavy on my heart. Like I said, from previous guests that have been on episodes here, putting your truth on paper, even if no one reads it but you, can be one of the most liberating things you can do. Now, we also got to practice healthy affirmations. You got to rebuild after incarceration. And that means you have to constantly remind yourself of your worth, especially when others question it. Now, that's not to say that if you're still that old you, if you have not evolved, that you don't need to question yourself, but you still have to have daily affirmations like I'm worthy of peace or my growth is valid. It can help rewire that internal narrative that we sometimes create that bogs us down. Now, I've always been a big proponent of therapy and peer support. That's part of what the Conviction Podcast is about, peer support, whether it's professional counseling or group sessions like those offered by community reentry programs, or listen to podcasts just like this. Talking to people who understand the journey can be powerful. In our episodes with like Eric, we've seen how how PTSD and trauma can quietly sabotage success unless it's processed in safe places. Okay. Now, you also have to practice selective sharing because not everyone deserves a front row seat to your journey, right? You got to share your wins and struggles with people who have earned your trust, not those waiting for you to slip up. This kind of discernment is a tool and not a wall. You can't share everything with everybody, okay? And that's what's most hurtful when you've shared what people have been through your struggle. Now they're seeing what you're doing now. Sometimes you don't need to tell them everything that's going on. And always have those self-check moments, guys, because when emotions are high, especially when we're around family, you need to give yourself permission to pause. You need to ask, is this fight worth my peace? That moment of a self-check can prevent days, even weeks, months, years of emotional chaos. Because if you're worried about what other people think about you, then you are destined to fail. Right? And they stay purpose-driven. Like I always say, man, staying busy, doing meaningful goals like your job, your business, your community work, or just reading or writing, whatever you're trying to strive and get towards. Parenting. Whatever keeps you focused forward, keep doing that, because purpose is a protective force. In every episode that I'm, you guys have been listening, in every episode we've heard that staying aligned with something bigger than your pain will always keep you grounded. So those boundaries that I just spoke about, they help protect your progress. But these other, there are other tools that can help build momentum. And while they may be seen as cold or harsh, I know a lot of people are going to disagree. They are still often the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And sometimes even for the people who don't understand you. Right. So this episode is for the person, the people who keep trying, even when it goes unnoticed. For the one person who rebuilt their life and still isn't trusted. For the person who's done the inner work but still gets treated like the past version of themselves. We're changing the narrative. And I want you to know that you are not alone. You don't need to keep proving your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. I'm going to say that again. You don't need to keep proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your growth is real. Your effort is valid. Your peace matters. And people's inability to see your transformation is not your burden to carry. I can remember saying to myself, I told I forgot who it was. Not gonna name no names because people, you ever heard that saying, empty wagon make a lot of noise. People are sometimes a thing like you speaking to them. But I can remember I said, all I've asked for is a second chance. And I thought that I was doing everything within my power to prove that I'm more than my past. And then they looked at me like I was crazy. Right. And that's all I still want is that second chance. So what I wanted to encourage you guys to do is to keep growing, keep going, and let your life speak louder than their doubts. Your consistency, your peace, your resilience, they tell a story no one can erase. Let your healed life become the loudest evidence of who you are. Again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the podcast. This is the Conviction Fiction. I want you to share this episode or all episodes because all of them have some meaningful, good stuff in it. Share it with someone who needs it. Leave us a review. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search the Conviction Fiction podcast and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, this is Antoine Rivers with the Conviction Fiction. Peace, guys.